Pause for a second, because what I'm about to tell you isn't showing up in the headlines. Something just happened quiet, cold, and buried deep inside strategic documents that Wall Street never wants you to see. This isn't news for the masses. This is what's happening behind closed doors where real decisions are made. We're talking about BlackRock, a firm managing over $13 trillion, a number so large that, if it were an economy, it would rank behind only the United States and China. And on March 23, 2026, in a strategic commentary that 99% of investors will never read, they made a move. A shift that, if you truly understand it, could change how you see the entire market. BlackRock moved to a neutral stance on U.S. equities. They began reducing exposure to long-term treasury bonds. No noise, no warning, but enough to tell you one thing: the largest pool of capital in the world has started to move. Pause, because this time, the signal isn't coming from the news, it's coming from actions. BlackRock is quietly preparing for a scenario they're now calling by name: a stagflation shock. But the real concern isn't in the headline of the report. It's buried deep in the lines most people will scroll past. A warning about regional banks. And if you think that doesn't affect you, you need to stop right here. Because when an institution controlling $13 trillion begins to restructure, the first thing that moves isn't the explanation. It's the money. The question was never what they say. The question has always been, what are they doing? And right now, April 2026, what BlackRock is doing isn't just a portfolio adjustment, it's a direct message about the safety of your deposits, about the stability of your local banks, and about the very financial system you're living inside. Stay with me until the end of this video, because by the time it's over, you'll see the full signal, understand the system behind it, and most importantly, know exactly what you need to do right now. Let's start with the truth, not the headlines. BlackRock is not a bank. They don't hold your deposits. They don't finance your car. They don't lend to small businesses. But they control $13 trillion money from pension funds, insurance pools, sovereign funds, and individual investors through ETFs. And when BlackRock moves, it's not a small flow of capital, it's an entire economic force shifting. Right now, they're sending a clear signal. They're lowering exposure to U.S. equities. They're reducing allocation to small caps, where regional banks are concentrated. At the same time, CEO Larry Fink is warning oil could hit $150, triggering a global recession. But the most dangerous part lies in one number: $875 billion. That's the amount of commercial real estate debt maturing in 2026. And regional banks are holding nearly 44% of that exposure, 3 times more than the largest banks. Interest rates remain high. Inflation hasn't fully cooled. There is no easy exit. This is the trap. And BlackRock saw it before the rest of the market even had time to react. It all started years ago when interest rates were near zero. Regional banks, relying on local knowledge, began reaching for yield, and they found it in commercial real estate. At first, everything looked perfect: stable cash flow, clear collateral, higher yields than bonds. But then the system began to drift. They built portfolios where 40 to 60% was tied to commercial real estate. They lent based on assumptions that are no longer true. Offices would always be full, retail would always be busy, rates would always stay low. The reality: remote work didn't disappear. Office vacancy is approaching 20%. Interest rates surged. And at the same time, they used short-term deposits to fund long-term assets like bonds. When rates rise, both sides break. Real estate values fall, and bond prices fall too. We saw this in 2023 with Silicon Valley Bank. But this time is different, because now a commercial real estate maturity wall is approaching, and regional banks are standing directly in front of it. Pause, because what's happening right now isn't panic. It's a calculated withdrawal of smart money. Institutions, large funds, asset managers have already seen what the rest of the market hasn't fully understood yet. $875 billion in commercial real estate debt is set to mature in 2026, while asset values have fallen 20 to 40% and office vacancies are at record highs. This is why BlackRock is repositioning. But understand this: smart money doesn't leave in a single day. It exits gradually, quietly, systematically. The data is already telling the story. Regional banks are falling behind, while large banks have outperformed by nearly 26% in just 1 year. This isn't random. This is an institutional rotation of capital, and if you think you have time to wait for clarity, history has already proven otherwise. In the 1980s, more than 1,000 community banks collapsed. Not because there were no warnings, but because the warnings came too early and were ignored. This time is no different. The big money has already started moving. The only question is, will you see it in time, confirmed? This is no longer a hypothesis. Look at Japan in the 1990s. Regional banks back then were doing exactly what the system encouraged, channeling capital into commercial real estate during a massive bubble. Tokyo land prices became so extreme that a small district was valued on par with the entire state of California. Then rates rose. The bubble burst. Real estate collapsed by as much as 70%. The banking system couldn't absorb the shock, and Japan entered 2 decades of stagnation. Not because there were no solutions, but because they chose to extend and pretend, hiding losses and delaying the problem. Now fast forward to 2023. Silicon Valley Bank didn't fail because it was reckless, but because it was positioned wrong for the environment: long-duration bonds in a low-rate world. When rates rose, asset values collapsed. Within 48 hours, deposits were gone. And today, the U.S. banking system is still carrying roughly $400 billion in unrealized losses. That number hasn't disappeared. It's just no longer being talked about. And this is why BlackRock is moving right now. Because when history repeats, smart money always leaves before the truth becomes undeniable. Pause, because what's converging right now isn't a single risk. It's 5 pressures tightening around the system at the same time. The first pressure: $875 billion in commercial real estate debt maturing in 2026, up 73% from the previous year. Regional banks, with 44% of their portfolios tied to this sector, are facing their largest refinancing risk. The second pressure: a $3 trillion private credit strain. Capital is locked, withdrawals are restricted, and regional banks, the silent backers behind it, are being pulled into the vortex. The third pressure: an oil shock. Energy prices are surging, inflation is returning, forcing the Federal Reserve to hold rates higher for longer. Which means real estate pressure doesn't ease, it intensifies. The fourth pressure: recession risk is accelerating. Models from Moody's place the probability at 49%. And when a downturn hits, regional banks are where the impact lands first. No diversification, no global buffer, just local economies already beginning to slow. This is no longer a warning. This is structure, and that structure is starting to crack. The fifth pressure isn't data, it's capital quietly pulling away. When BlackRock, with $13 trillion, shifts from overweight to neutral, cuts U.S. equities, avoids small caps, warns about stagflation, and reduces long-duration bonds, they're not talking. They're exiting. And when institutional capital steps back, regional bank stocks lose their support. Prices fall, confidence weakens, depositors grow uneasy. And in the digital age, a single tap can turn into a bank run within 48 hours. So what should you do? Don't panic, but understand the system. Know what type of bank you're using. Check its exposure to commercial real estate above 40% is a warning sign. Understand the $250,000 insurance limit from the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation. Watch the indicators institutions are watching: unrealized losses, uninsured deposits, and most importantly, don't stand against the direction of $13 trillion in capital. Because history doesn't reward those who wait for clarity. It rewards those who recognize the signal before the crowd does. Pause, because this is no longer a single risk. This is 6 pressures converging at the same time. Recession probability, according to Moody's, has reached 49% and is still rising. Tensions with Iran are pushing oil toward a $150 scenario. Private credit is beginning to crack, and that stress is flowing directly into the system regional banks depend on. This is not one problem. This is a chain reaction. And BlackRock has already seen it. April 2026. They're not waiting. They are repositioning, reducing risk, rotating capital. $13 trillion has started to move. Publicly, they say they're neutral on the market. But understand this correctly. That's not confidence. That's defense. The question is no longer what will happen. It's this: will you move before or after that capital? Because history repeats one thing: those who wait for certainty always arrive late. In the next 48 hours, the upcoming video will break down exactly which regional banks are most vulnerable, based on the same data BlackRock is watching. This isn't content you watch just to know. This is something that could protect your money. The signal is already here. The only question is, will you act in time?